summer, everybody, and welcome to the SIP series on the Stir. I'm your host, Trish Muyco-Tobin. While we are officially in the dog days of summer, whether you like it or not, and to commemorate or commiserate, however you see fit, we are here to keep you company. And this week, have we got a list for you? We're talking about some of our favorite movies about dogs. Some of you know I'm mom to Rowan, my super handsome border collie, my doggy number one, and also to Bauer, my lemon beagle, who is as naughty as he is cute. And we can't forget about Pebbles Baldwin, Debbie Baldwin's adorable puggle child. Debbie is also mom to 3 beautiful young adults. And of course, she's our special guest co-host. Ladies and gentlemen, author and entertainment columnist, Debbie Baldwin. Hello, Debbie.
Hi, Trish. Thanks for having me.
Sure. Well, okay. So Debbie has put together her signature top 11 list of dog movies. And we're talking films that prominently feature dogs. They're either in the title role or much of the plot of the movie centers around them. Deb, I'll have you explain your methodology for this particular list, which may be surprising
kind of
to
quirky
some.
list, yeah.
Yeah, because especially for perhaps certain movies that are not on it. And
Yes.
I'm going to have you explain that.
And okay, and I will say that, you know, as you said, it's a list of movies that where the dog is the sort of, or dogs are the central focus of the movie, because there's a laundry list of movies that have fantastic dogs in them. Jim Carrey's The Mask with his little dog, Milo, I think the dog's name is. As Good as It Gets with Jack Nicholson and the little
Yeah.
Those movies aren't about the dog. So that's the first big criterion. And the second one, and there is at least one or two exceptions on the list.
A couple, yes.
I can't watch a dog movie where the dog dies at the end. And I know that's just me and my
No, it's not just you.
But you know, it's a little peccadillo. I literally can watch a bloodbath of humans. I love Kill Bill. I love Tarantino. I love war movies. But one dog and it's over for me. It like puts me in a funk. So the list is mainly comprised of dog movies where the dog is around at the end.
No, seriously, I wholeheartedly agree with you. I mean, that's the reason I've stayed away from John Wick, just because of the premise of that movie from the very beginning, and it's prevented me from seeing Keanu Reeves, whom I love.
I know.
But that just was a total turnoff for me.
I know.
But I'm totally with you on that one, and that's probably the reason I haven't seen as many dog movies as I would like to see. I love dogs, but you're right.
And I mean, this was years ago, but when Marley and Me came out, I was talking to a friend of mine, and she said her babysitter had taken her young kids, to see Marley and Me. And I said, really? And she was like, yeah, they love dogs. I'm like, you know, the dog dies in the movie. She drove like a bat out of hell to the movie theater and called the kids out before the scene.
I see. I wonder if that's even more traumatic.
I know.
Being cried out of the theater.
I know, but you know, it's just some people, you know, love that emotion and that, you know, the incredible, you know, acting of the human, you know, dealing with that kind of a loss.
You do, but it really makes you feel awful.
Yeah. Oh, it's hideous.
The heartbreak. The heartbreak.
There are psychological studies that say the loss of a pet can be more devastating than the loss of a family member, because there's no negative emotion associated with your pet. It's just all about love. So
yes.
Yeah.
So
with happy dog movies.
Yes, there are, and one of them, the first one on our list, actually is an oldie but goodie. It's from 1955, 65 years ago. In June of this year, this film made its debut. The first animated feature film shot with the CinemaScope widescreen process, what we know now as widescreen, and that is Lady and the Tramp.
I mean, all you really have to say is spaghetti. And it's, you know, my kids, and we have this kind of running joke in our family that whenever anyone's like trying to get a bite of something that you're eating, they say, I'm gonna lady in the Tramp it. Try and
And
bite off
everyone
the
knows what that means.
you know, it's just a fabulous animated movie about this very spoiled, pristine, beautiful Cocker Spaniel who's pampered, named Lady, and she gets in a little bit of a, she gets lost and separated from her family, her human family, and encounters Tramp, who's an alley dog and happy with his carefree,
His existence, yes.
Yes. He eats the scraps from the Italian restaurant. And, you know, and in the end, the family, when they find Lady, and Tramp, of course, saves her. I mean, it's really a very traditional kind of princess, damsel in distress story, just with dogs. And they adopt Tramp as well in the end, and they have puppies. The final scene is the parents, I think their last name is Deer, and they have their child, and then Lady and Tramp have their 3 puppies that all the girls look exactly like Lady, and the little scamp boy looks exactly like Tramp. So
can't think of a better ending than that when then you have puppies involved. So this isn't really even among the biggest Disney grossing films, but when it was released, it was the highest grossing Disney cartoon since Snow White was released in 1937. So it just goes to show that, you know, when this film came out, it was a pretty big deal. And also, you know, this is probably forgotten in the film archives, but Tramp is voiced by an actor named Larry Roberts, and he did a lot more TV and theater work, so we don't really hear his name much. But Lady was voiced by Peggy Lee, the screen actress, and it was considered really the first instance that you have a marquee movie star be featured as, you know, a voice in an animated film, and it was Peggy Lee.
And here's something else I learned about this movie. Did you know that Walt Disney is from Missouri?
Yes, Marceline, Missouri.
All right.
Yes.
Well, the town in Lady and the Tramp is based on Marceline, Missouri, where Walt Disney is from. So.
Yes, and you know, that's not surprising that you thought that, because you know, when you think of Walt Disney, you think of California, really, because that's where, you know, his creative juices really started to flow, and that's where he created and stuff. But yes, so the film setting was inspired by this little Missouri town. I believe it's a couple hours away from Kansas City, to the north. And also the opening scenes where Darling, she unwraps that gift on Christmas morning, and it was Lady, of course.
Right.
That was inspired by a real life moment between Mr. Disney and his wife. He apparently forgot a dinner date that he made with her. And to make up for it, there was an actual real puppy in a hat box moment, and after which he was, of course, immediately forgiven, because how could you not?
You tell all the men out there when they're in trouble. That's
puppy in a box.
Yeah, puppy in a hat box. Works every time.
Exactly. Put them all on notice. So my gosh, we're going to change gears totally here, and we're going to jump right into 1983. Deb, this is a good movie. I enjoyed this movie. I was surprised this was on the list, but it is, and it is Cujo. Cujo.
Yeah. I mean, it's a great dog movie. And let's mix it up a little. I mean, every movie can't be this, like, you know, like there's 8 of those on the list. And, you know, Cujo is a classic Stephen King horror movie based on his book, which incidentally, I was reading this article about it, and Stephen King confessed in an interview that he wrote the entire book on drugs, like he was high, and he doesn't remember writing it. And he, even when he read the manuscript, he didn't remember writing it. But I mean,
I think it was the time where he was at the peak of his addiction, and he's been pretty candid about that. So yeah, maybe explain some of the instances there where we've got some things going on.
Yeah. And
But speaking of real life moments, Cujo, the story itself was inspired by a um, a visit to a mechanic that Stephen King himself did in the 1970s, and it was, he said himself, it was in the middle of nowhere. It was in Bridgeton, Maine, and the mechanic had a dog who just growled at him, and it was the Saint Bernard dog, and it was just so intimidating, and it just, enough for him to remember it later and make it a basis for this story.
and yeah, and what's interesting is, that, well, the book ends differently than the film, and the film was not well received. It did okay in theaters, but it was not a huge office smash hit like when you often think of Stephen King films. But it's obviously kind of risen to cult status over the years, and any sort of badly behaved dog is now Cujo. And it's a very unredeeming story, the film, with this dog that's been bitten by a bat and has gone rabid and is just killing everyone around him. So it's a dark story, but it's a great film, and it's sort of a good Halloween horror, if you're going to do a movie marathon. That's a good one to add to the list.
Right, and it's such a pop culture reference now. When you say Cujo, you know exactly
Totally.
what we're talking about. We're talking about a bad doggy.
Everybody knows. Yeah.
And Cujo, again, as we mentioned, inspired by the real incident, was a Saint Bernard. About 5 Saint Bernards were used in addition to a mechanical head. So think like Jaws, only dog form.
Oh.
And also a guy in a dog costume. So since we're talking about movies about dogs, I find it particularly interesting some of the processes they use to be able to, we're dealing with doggies here. Sometimes they listen to you, sometimes they don't.
Sure.
So Cujo, of course, bad dog in the movie. I remember particularly the scenes of him just, attacking people with that foam around his mouth. And that foam was egg whites and sugar. And Cujo apparently loved it so much that they had to figure out a way for him to not lick it too much during filming the scenes where he was vicious, Also, that scene in the Pinto where the dog was attacking the family, what they did was, working with the main dog and all the other stand-ins, was they had to put some of the dog's favorite toys inside the little Pinto to try to get the dog to get him. Yes. And so that was another thing. And then another thing is that, how can we tell, Debbie, how can we tell when our doggies are happy? How can you tell when Pebbles is happy? And one of the ways is they wag their their tails high in the air. And the dogs on set were so happy to be on set, and they were having such a grand old time. They were wagging their tails in the air when they were supposed to attack and be bad. And so there were some scenes where they actually had to tie down the tail to the leg so that they won't be wagging when they were filming the bad dog scene. So those are just some little behind the scenes action going on with the dogs, and it worked to great effect.
Yeah. And the young boy in that movie is played by Danny Pintaro of Who's the Boss fame. So I think he might be the only well-known actor
to come out of that. I saw the name in the credits and I knew that it looked familiar, and I knew he was a child actor of some kind, but I couldn't think which sitcom to associate him with.
He plays Alyssa Milano's little brother.
There you go. All right, so we're going to move on now, and from Cujo we're going to go to 1989, and I want to kind of present these two movies together, and you'll see why later. The first one is Canine, and it was described as a buddy cop action comedy movie, and it was starring Jim Belushi.
Correct. And I will say this, we're going to talk about these two together. The other film is Turner and Hooch.
Also released in 1989, 3 months later.
3 months later. They snuck Canine in, and every once in a while, every moviegoer knows that there'll be these sort of mirror image films that get released in the same year. And maybe it's that one studio suspects that there's going to be a big hit, so they quickly knock off, or they're just both happen to be entertaining a script that's similar. Footloose and Flashdance came out in the same year. Armageddon and Deep Impact came out in the same year. It's, so the fact that these two dog movies came out in the same year with very similar plots, but Canine, they're both great movies, and I can watch either one of them. One's better than the other, but both good. And Jim Belushi plays a detective in Southern California who won't work with a partner, so he gets assigned a drug dog whose name is Jerry Lee. It's a German Shepherd, and with a lot of personality and very, like his guardian, very stubborn. And they're looking for the person who's trying to kill Jim Belushi, and they're looking for a drug dealer. And the thing that really elevates this movie, which is the most cornball thing, but when it comes to dog movies, the cornier, you bring it on, is the dog gets shot in the film, and Jim Belushi thinks that the dog has died. So he's sitting next to the dog, finally confessing after being this gruff, unaffectionate guy, that he loves the dog, and the dog was such a great companion, and he really misses the dog. And then all of a sudden, the dog's tail, like you just see the tail go up and down, and it's just a priceless moment in a movie. You're like, everyone loves it. The audience goes crazy. It's one of those, where the crowd's actually clapping. It was clapping in theater when it happened.
So you mentioned Jerry Lee, who is the dog. Jerry Lee was a German Shepherd. He was a 3-year-old German Shepherd named Brando, who actually is from Germany. The studio held a year-long search for the right dog to star in this film. Could not find any American German Shepherds. Found one from Germany. Brando was his name. More than 40 dogs were considered. And so just to tell you about the amount of preparation that went in here for this doggy, he had to learn commands in English. So he had to learn a second language to be able to star in this film. So, hey,
like many foreign actors.
Exactly. Why should doggies be an exception? So that's Jerry Lee. So we move on to Turner and Hooch. Again, 3 months later was released. Also described as a buddy cop action comedy film, this time around starring Tom Hanks.
Yes, and this movie is fantastic. It's, again, a cop in Southern California. It was, I think, a little, not suspicious, but weird that these two films were so similar. But Tom Hanks acquires Hooch, who is a French Mastiff, this giant slobbering monster of a dog, when Tom Hanks's friend and the dog's owner is killed. It is The Odd Couple with a human and a dog. So you got this farting, messy, slobbering dog who eats anything and chews anything in this very meticulous,
right.
Think Will Ferrell and The Good Guys, and Tom Hanks is so perfectly cast in this film. It's this family friendly, there's a little romantic component to it. Hooch is helping him figure out why his friend was killed, and there's suspicious activity at the waterfront, and Hooch is helping him investigate. And spoiler alert, this is the one movie on the list where the dog dies at the end. Hooch is shot and killed in the final gunfight with the bad guy. However, it is mitigated by the fact that Hooch has been very friendly with the female dog of the female love interest of Tom Hanks. I hope that came out right. There's two humans who are romantically involved, and we find out that there are two dogs who are romantically involved.
I hope it came out right.
And so at the very end, Tom Hanks's character is going to visit his girlfriend, and her dog has had puppies, and
Puppies.
one of the puppies is like a mini hooch, and it's
Sure.
so you get like a little bit of that happy ending, and it's
Makes
redeemed.
it a little better. Exactly.
Yeah. And so it's such a fantastic movie. I'll forgive that that painful moment. And Tom Hanks is fantastic as always. I mean,
Right.
you can watch him do anything, but this is a great film.
So
for
the doggy hooch was as you said, a French Mastiff. They describe him as a dog de Bordeaux. But he was a 17-month-old doggy named Beasley. And as with most films using animals, he had some stand-ins, and about 3 other dogs were used to film this movie. Now, did you hear about the controversy surrounding the director of this film?
I did not.
Okay, so the director of the film, when it was released, he is Roger Spottiswoode, but he wasn't the first director. There was a director who was working on the movie. They were already in production, but he was fired by studio executives less than 2 weeks into it. And that is none other than Henry Winkler, the Fonz.
Oh, I did know that. Mm-hmm.
Yes. So we're not really quite sure what happened. Believe me, I've looked into it. But Henry Winkler had given an interview later on alluding to what may have happened. And his famous quote was, "Let's just say I got along better with Hooch than I did with Turner," and left it at that. So, okay. Yeah.
Interesting.
So
those two would have collaborated a lot over the years. So that's interesting that they.
Yeah.
And
you would think like two of the nicest guys that you know about, that you figure, but that surprised me as well. And so Deb, we were talking about how these two came out about the same time in the same year. K9 made $78 million at the box office. Turner and Hooch made $71 million. So I'm thinking that's because the one came out first, and by the time Turner and Hooch came around, we have doggy cop buddy movie fatigue. Because I'm thinking in the year 2020, the last 10 years, if you had a movie with the same setup starring these two guys, Jim Belushi and Tom Hanks, I don't think that there'd be a question as to which movie would be more successful.
Right.
What do you think?
Right, no question. I mean, Jim Belushi is a very charming actor. I like watching him on screen a lot. But come on, I mean, Tom Hanks. He's won 2 Oscars.
Tom Hanks is Tom Hanks.
In a league of his
own.
But
this was before. This was in '89. This was before he was Tom Hanks.
But the talent was still there.
The talent was already there. It took a few more years for the world to really discover him. So our next movie from the 1990s is Far From Home. I haven't seen this movie, Deb. I want to see it. Far From Home: The Adventures of Yellow Dog.
And remember, parents, when you're searching the film, the film is Far From Home: The Adventures of Yellow Dog, because there's like some hideous horror film called Far From Home.
Oh no!
Not a mistaken download for your children.
All right, Far From Home: The Adventures of Yellow Dog.
Far From Home there are a million of these movies. If you search movies, dog adventure movies, Lost with Dog, Dog in Woods, whatever. And this one just really stands out for me. It stars Bruce Davidson and Mimi Rogers as the parents of a young boy, Angus, who's played by Jesse Bradford. And young, like college-age kids or slightly older will know Jesse Bradford from 2 movies, Bring It On and Swim Fan. He has
That's right, Swim Fan, yeah.
A very, successful career in film. And he finds this stray yellow lab, and that's the one very Hollywood moment, is this dog is the best looking stray dog you've ever seen in your life.
Of course he is.
It came out of the grooming, had lost from the groomer. And they are on a boating trip I think it's in Canada. I think it's in
Canada, yeah.
Mm-hmm. And the boat capsizes, and the father's rescued, and the boy and the dog wash ashore and are lost. and they go on this 20-mile adventure, this hike through dangerous woods to try and get back home. And and the dog, defends the boy, and the dog is lost at the end, but the boy keeps looking for him. I mean, it's everything. Honestly, parents, if you are looking for a wholesome, happy, heartwarming family film, Far From Home, The Story of Yellow Dog. Is that what it's called?
Yeah. The Adventures of Yellow Dog.
Far From Home, The Adventures of Yellow Dog is the movie.
I did see the trailer this morning, and I want to see it. I want to see it.
I tear up watching just the trailer. I mean,
exactly.
It really tugs on every heartstring, but in the best way,
Yes.
It's a really good family film.
So the doggy in the film is named Yellow, and he is played mostly by a yellow lab named Dakota, plus 4 additional yellow labs. Just to give you a little tidbit about the doggy who's in the title.
Dakota's tired today. We're gonna bring in Duke for a couple of scenes.
Yeah, so Dakota can rest in his trailer, or maybe Dakota's a girl dog, who knows. So so that is Far From Home, The Adventures of Yellow Dog, and The Adventures of Yellow Dog is very important to remember if you want to get to the right movie.
I mean, I feel like I need to go watch it right after we wrap this up.
It's out there. And then that's another thing to note. About half the movies on this list is available on Disney Plus, because a lot of these movies are Disney movies, Buena Vista Pictures, so you can find all of them easily if you have Disney Plus and some of the other streaming services. Our next film on the list is from 1996, so a year later after Far From Home, and this is completely different. It's another Disney movie, 101 Dalmatians. This was released 36 years after the animated feature. Animated film 101 Dalmatians was released in 1961.
And the animated film is great too. This live action version with Glenn Close as Cruella de Vil is outstanding.
That's what you remember.
Is the original Miranda Priestley from The Devil Wears Prada. I honestly wonder if Meryl Streep got her inspiration.
Seriously, good point.
But Glenn Close is fabulous. Half of her hair is white and half of her hair is black, and she, of course, is the evil clothing designer who wants to use Dalmatian skin to make a coat, and then the family who has to save the dogs, and the little love story of the dogs, and they do a good job with managing because it's a lot of dogs in a lot of scenes, and they do use CGI in this film.
But they use real dogs too. 230 Dalmatian puppies and 20 adult dogs were used. So they do have real dogs, a lot of them. And so, we talked about, in addition to tail wagging, which is the way a doggy shows you that they're happy, and they're happy to see you, and they're happy about something. Dogs also love to lick. They love to lick your face. They love to lick your feet. But, in some of these scenes, they needed the dogs to be more enthusiastic about that licking. So what did they do, Debbie?
Oh, I'm going to guess they put peanut butter on their face or something.
Well, you can see the peanut butter, though. It was somebody's job to rub raw hot dogs all over Jeff Daniels' face, so that the doggies would be all over him, nonstop licking his face. Raw hot dogs. And in some instances, steak juice. Because you can't see it.
Right, and I imagine the dog would be very enthusiastic about licking that.
Can you imagine, producer telling somebody on set, okay, you need to do this now. Grab the tray of raw hot dogs, go over to Mr. Daniels. Yes, so that is, high-tech operation right there. And did you know that one of our favorite directors from the 80s, John Hughes, was involved in making this film? He wrote and produced this film, and this is the film where he actually made the most money out of. Think about all those great John Hughes films, and
Amazing.
This was the film. And guess why? Disney movie, we're talking merchandise. So he got a
Oh,
huge chunk of the merchandise revenue from this film. When the film came out itself, I mean, it was just to huge fanfare. They actually produced 17,000 different kinds of items for merchandise. So if you think about that, we're talking clothing, makeup, what have you, and just how many pieces
raw
of
hot dog,
clothing. Yeah, how many pieces of clothing, for
cologne.
little girls and little boys
Oh my God.
sold, and then
T-shirts and-
multiply that.
Yeah.
So Mr. John Hughes made a lot of money from this film. So there you have it.
It's not the only time John Hughes is going to come up.
That is right. That is right. So we're going to move on to the year 2000, and it brings us, my goodness, such a hilarious film, Best in Show.
This is another departure from the human canine love story that most
Definitely, but I was happy to see it on the list.
It's on my top 10 list of all-time funniest films. It is the second, well, I mean, arguably the third if you count this is Spinal Tap, but the second film by this ensemble, almost repertory film company, with Christopher Guest and Michael McKean and Catherine O'Hara and Eugene Levy, and Parker Posey, and a couple of other actors whose names are escaping me. Waiting for Guffman was the first one, about a community theater director in a
Yes.
small Missouri town who thinks a Broadway a Broadway scout is coming to watch their small production. This is Best in Show, which pokes fun at the people involved with the Westminster Dog Show.
It's a documentary style movie.
That
culminates with the 125th annual Mayflower Kennel Club Dog Show.
And if you haven't seen the movie, rent it immediately. It is the funniest film. Everyone can relate. It depicts these 4 different dog owners, each with a different breed of dog that really kind of reflects their personality.
True.
Parker Posey and her husband with their Weimaraner, and they're high strung, and the dog's high strung, and they don't know why the dog's so high strung, and they're that insanity. And then you have Eugene Levy and Catherine O'Hara, who are a married couple. Catherine O'Hara's very colorful past keeps resurfacing as the show goes on.
Yes, and their dog Winky.
Terrier. And then, of course, Jennifer Coolidge plays, who has just been in countless comedies over the years, plays a wealthy dog owner married to a much older man.
Who is kind of like an Anna Nicole Smith character in this movie. Yeah.
And she was the MILF in American Pie. But her dog, Rhapsody in White, who is handled, I guess it's her handler, is played by Jane Lynch, who's another just hilarious, talented woman.
She was Christy Cummings, the dog trainer.
And again, in my family, we have a joke that, when people are very high maintenance, they are Rhapsody in White. So there's that drama, and then all of these interlocking storylines. Christopher Guest plays a very rural guy with a hound dog, with a basset hound, that he's entering in the competition.
His doggy was my favorite dog in the whole thing.
Yeah, I think most people were kind of rooting for him because he was, the underdog.
Yes.
Pun intended. And so it's a great film. From the announcing, Fred Willard, to the behind the scenes stuff with the dogs and the lunacy of the owners. It's hilarious.
It is hilarious. Of course, this movie written and directed by Christopher Guest, and also doing some writing as Eugene Levy, who co-wrote the movie and also composed the 2 songs that we hear in the movie about Winky the dog. Talk about, the caliber of the cast. It's no surprise at all to hear that much of this film really was improvised. The screenplay itself is only like 16 pages long.
The talent is unbelievable. And Christopher Guest has worked with these people before.
Right.
So he's probably just writing out the very bare bones of the scene and saying, let's see what they do with it.
Yeah.
That's how talented these people are.
Exactly. And just a really interesting note, Fred Willard, and his counterpart, Jim Pittock, they filmed their scenes, the two of them together, in less than 2 days because Jim Pittock had another engagement that he had to get to. But to set up these two characters who are just hilarious, just the two of them together, acting against each other.
And just the Fred Willard's this loosey-goosey, just like talks off the top of his head.
Right.
And Pittock, who's this very proper British, talking about using the technical terms, everything right, and never breaking.
Never breaking. And there was actually a method to that. Fred Willard, of course, was the color commentator. Buck Laughlin was his name. And he was specifically told by the director, by Christopher Guest, to not research anything about dogs. Just show up and
talk.
And on the other hand, Jim Pittock, Trevor Beckwith, even a very formal name, Trevor Beckwith, was told to do the research. And so he really comes across as somebody who's very knowledgeable about dogs. And then these two together.
Yeah.
These two
there's
together.
A scene in that film. Do you remember, Trish, when the Weimaraner goes after the judge? It's like bites her.
Yeah.
During the show. And Fred Willard, I can't remember the exact quote, but he looks at Pittock and he says, "Man, that dog went after her like she was made out of hamburger," or something. Like, he makes some really off the cuff comment about it, and the look on the other announcer's face, he's so horrified because it would never happen at the dog show that a dog would snap. Oh my God,
oh my God,
so funny.
It is hilarious. It is hilarious. All right, so our next show is from 2006, and this one I hadn't seen either, but I see that it is on Disney Plus, Deb, and it is 8 Below, and it's based on a true story.
And it stars Paul Walker, who passed away a couple of years ago, who's the star of the Fast and the Furious franchise. This movie is a little different in terms of dogs in the wilderness hardship film, because the premise of this film is that Paul Walker is at a research facility in Antarctica, and this is all the very beginning of the film, and the setup goes off to look with another scientist to look for a piece of a meteor or meteorite, and something happens during that little trek, and the dogs save the life of the scientist. So they get back to camp, and all of a sudden there's a big storm and a lot of unexpected stuff happens, and the dogs end up getting left at the station alone, tied in their leads. So, it's a hopeless situation for these dogs. And Paul Walker, from the moment he gets back to the U.S. or when he's out of Antarctica, is trying everything to get back up there to get these dogs rescued. And so it's this dual sequence of scenes where Paul Walker is borrowing, and stealing and trying to get a pilot and a plane to get back up there, and these dogs alone trying to survive in the wilderness. And they just have their wild encounters in the wilderness. These dogs are bred for this kind of weather. They use in the film they use Malamutes, Alaskan Malamutes, and Siberian Huskies. And it's the story of how these dogs survive for, guess how long, Trish?
Oh no, I'm curious. How many?
I think it's 6 months.
Oh goodness.
On their own.
Wow.
And they, and as you said, it's based on a true story, and these dogs find a couple of life-saving encounters where, like, they find a flock of gulls and they are able to down a couple of them and eat them. And then they find some sort of beached walrus or a seal or something that they are able to eat. And various dogs get injured, but by and large, it's a very positive, happy story of survival. The lead dog is sort of the main dog character of the film, well, main character, because that's really the only character that the audience really cares about is this main lead female dog. And Paul Walker finally gets back, and lo and behold, the dogs are, 6 of the 8 dogs are alive, and 5 of them come barreling over the hill. But this lead girl has been hurt, and they drag Paul Walker back to where she's, whimpering and can't move. I'm telling you, that's a big payoff moment in a film when the dog you're terrified is going to die, and there's no help.
It sounds like such an emotional roller coaster ride. And I'm thinking, though, since I haven't seen this film, it's then the human retelling of the story, because who knows what happened while those dogs were out there.
Yeah, it's guesswork, because, they just piece it together. How could 8 sled dogs, but most of them survive 6 months in Antarctica? And they, I guess there's a few very obvious things that would have to happen for these dogs to have made it, but it's a
which is quite a story. My gosh.
Yeah, and very dog focused. So if you're looking for
much
a
definitely
dog movie, that's it.
Right. And so I understand that about 30 dogs were used in this film, and I would think that all of them had to have skills pretty up there to be able to act as stand-ins for the lead dogs, which is an amazing feat. And for the filming to take place, it's supposed to be in Antarctica, but I believe they shot it in Norway. But still, when you think about the elements and what they've had to deal with, and to have these dogs pretty much act, it's amazing.
It is amazing. And it's really amazing how these breeds are designed through nature to live in this environment, and and thrive in it, really. So anyway, great movie.
Okay, so this is a completely different type of movie, but I'm happy to see this movie on the list. Oh, it's such a fun movie to watch. And we're talking about 2016's The Secret Life of Pets.
Okay. I was like, I wonder which one she's going to say.
It's your list.
Yeah. The tagline for The Secret Life of Pets is the poster is a picture of a dog sitting with its back to the audience, facing the front door of a house. And the caption says, "You think this is what we do all day." And this is a great animated movie that every note of this film resonates with a pet owner in the audience, whether it's the fat cat, trying to, who knocks the kibbles aside and tries to explore what's in the refrigerator while the owner is gone, or whether it's the dog running its little bottom along the carpet. I mean, every little thing that as a pet guardian you know and you can relate to, and you're like, oh, my bird used to do that, or my fish used to do that, or my cat. And so
did you not have a moment thinking after seeing this film, oh my gosh, what if my dogs do something like this when I go to work or when I go to the store?
I know. It's of that series of animated films, is this a Pixar movie or is this Disney?
This is brought to you by the same guys who brought us Despicable Me.
Okay.
So, it has the same nuances, it has the same effects, it has the same way of storytelling. In fact, the beginning of the movie where you have that park scene, if you look quickly, you'll see Gru walking his dog. And in other instances of the film, some of the minions make an appearance as toys for the pets, or something posted on the fridge door as posters or whatever, as pictures. So that's kind of the connection.
There's no shameless marketing that is
not at all.
But yeah, and you picture these animators. I mean, these films are such works of art. You picture these animators, creating fur on a dog, like when the wind, rustles it, or they're really beautiful movies to watch. And this one is just hysterically funny. This little adventure of these animals, and happy
And the
to be
cast, I mean, it was a huge
yes.
cast. You had Louis C.K. as Max, Eric Stone Street, of
Kevin,
course, Cam
right,
from Modern Family. He
family.
was Duke, Jenny Slate as Gidget, Dana Carvey as Pops, Ellie
Yeah,
Kemper as Katie.
Kevin Hart again. Kevin Hart's in it
Well,
too.
he was my favorite character. He was
Yeah,
Snowball the bunny.
right. But Snowball the bunny is the star of the film.
Yes, he is. And this really surprised me, but it sure made sense. But in the, I guess, where was that? The cave or the underground thing that the
Like a sewer.
yes, the flushed, I think that's what they call it, the flushed animals or whatever, the sewer. He gets emotional talking about Ricky who didn't make it. Remember that? He gets really, really, really verklempt about Ricky who didn't make it. And it's a reference to 1991's Boys in the Hood. If you remember that movie, it was a group of young men who became involved in gangs.
Yeah.
So Ricky who didn't make it was Ricky from Boys in the Hood. In fact, this is actually the second time Kevin Hart has made a reference to that movie. We both love this movie. It was Get Hard with Will Ferrell. When they are around a dining table, and I believe it was Kevin Hart's wife who asked him, kind of questioned him and challenged him about his so-called experience in prison. And Kevin Hart said something like, there's some boys in the hood. It was me, Ricky, and so he does it again. So I found it particularly funny, knowing what he was referencing. But Snowball and that voice,
funny.
and you can and I actually pictured Kevin Hart in a bunny costume every time. But that was such a fun movie, and so we are putting it next to a 2018 movie, which was also an animated movie, but completely different, and that is Isle of Dogs. Deb, I wasn't sure what to think about this movie. I find it quite strange. I understand you either love it or you don't.
And I loved it. It is a very strange movie. It is Wes Anderson, who, if you like Wes Anderson, this is an animated peek into his crazy mind. His live action films are strange enough, so you can imagine what he would do given free reign with animation. Stop action animation. And it's the story of a canine flu that has emerged in a fictional Japanese town, and the mayor of the town has decided to quarantine all the dogs. So the dogs are all sent to an island called Trash Island, which is then name is changed to the Isle of Dogs. A little boy whose dog has been taken goes to the island to try and locate his dog Spots. And it's just this quirky adventure. There's this thread of nefarious activity. Why are the dogs? What's the real reason these dogs are being quarantined? Right. This tiny bit of intrigue that adds another component to the film. So much humor. And Trish, just so you can see, I had to print off the list of voice actors.
Oh my goodness. I believe you.
I'm going to read it. Bryan Cranston, Edward Norton, Bob Balaban, Jeff Goldblum, Bill Murray, Greta Gerwig, Frances McDormand, Scarlett Johansson, Harvey Keitel, F. Murray Abraham, Tilda Swinton, Yoko Ono, Ken Watanabe. I mean, I can keep reading.
Seriously.
The level of talent of the voice talent is unbelievable. And the whole concept, the dogs speak and, are sort of drive the whole plot forward. Most of the voice talent is voicing dogs.
Right, right.
Yeah, and it's a weird movie. There's no question.
You know,
But
when I saw that cast list, I didn't even bother to write them. Like, this is too long. I'll try to remember them. But you're right. I mean, it's unbelievable, that cast. This is, so of course, Wes Anderson wrote, directed this movie. This is his 8th collaboration with one of our favorite actors, Bill Murray.
okay.
And so Bill Murray is actually the dog named Boss. He voiced that voice. But yeah, it's unbelievable. And you talk about the special effects with a lot of these animated movies featuring dogs. This is the first film to feature the stop motion technique, and it's a camera technique where you stop and start the camera to manipulate the movement, every single movement of the characters in a cartoon. So in 2018, when it came out, it was the only animated film to be nominated twice for the Academy Awards. One was the Best Animated Feature, and one was the Best Original Score, unfortunately losing both to Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and Black Panther, respectively.
Crime.
Yeah, I think so. Now that I know what went behind what went into shooting this movie.
Although the animated Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse was a very worthy film.
It was.
That was just too bad that they were up against each other because they're both interesting movies.
Exactly. So we are moving on then. And, we're not doing this chronologically because I wanted to end. I had to ask Deb, okay, out of all these movies, which one was your absolute favorite when it came to just thinking about, the best, most perfect dog movie? And according to Debbie, hers is 1992's Beethoven.
It's not according to Debbie. It is the best movie about a dog ever made.
All right.
Empirically true. The end. Goodbye.
That's it.
Beethoven.
A mic drop.
Yeah. Diet Coke drop.
Oh.
I woke the dog up. So Beethoven is the story of this giant Saint Bernard that is taken in by this family. Who the head of the household is Charles Grodin, who's played by Charles Grodin, who's a very buttoned up, persnickety guy. And as you can imagine, Beethoven is this giant puppy. Look, we had a big dog when I was little. My parents always said he's got a great big dog body and a little tiny puppy brain. And that's kind of how Beethoven is destroying this house. But they discover very early on that there's a vet in their neighborhood who's played by Dean Jones. Now there's a little interesting full circle there because Dean Jones is most famous for his Disney film, The Shaggy Dog. Yes. So now he gets an opportunity to play the villain in a very family-friendly.
Which is so out of character for him.
Oh, so out of character, but he's great in it. I mean, as this nefarious vet who's performing experiments or tests using these dogs, abducting them and using them while they're at his facility. So Beethoven, it's up to Beethoven to, bring down the bad guy and make Charles Grodin realize that a family with a dog is, a dog makes every family better. And I'm sure you're going to give us some stats on this, but I know it spawned multiple sequels, none of which are as good as the original.
No. Yes, definitely. And, you mentioned John Hughes earlier. This was another John Hughes reference that we were referring to because he was actually one of the co-writers, only you won't see that in the credits because he did this under the pseudonym of Edmond Dantes, who is a character in The Count of Monte Cristo.
Yes, so John Hughes again in the background, behind the scenes, making great movies. But if you're looking for a fun, funny, heartwarming family film, this movie has everything. It's the dog is incredible. The acting of the cast, the human cast, is incredible.
Yes. Well, yeah, I mean, when I saw it on your list, it made me want to see it again. Beethoven, of course, is played by a Saint Bernard. And if you remember the Saint Bernard we mentioned earlier in the show, and that was Cujo, I'd take Beethoven over Cujo any day. But we were talking earlier today about how, just this puppy was the perfect size for a body pillow. You just want to cuddle with him in bed.
Yeah, and I mean, the downside to this movie, if you're looking for a family-friendly movie to watch with your kids, is that they will beg you for Saint Bernard after this movie's over.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that at all. It would make me want a Saint Bernard, no question. So there is our list for you today. It's such a fun list. I mean, dog movies in general, they always want to make you go hug your doggy or play with your doggy after seeing one. And so Debbie, since we are in the dog days of summer, I figure for our signature sweet treat, we'll need something to cool and refresh. And I can't think of a better concoction than my watermelon limeade. It tastes just as good as it sounds. It's very, very easy. You'll need watermelon, sugar, lime, ice. That's it. Or you can fancy it up, add a splash of rum or tequila, a salt rim glass, but in its purest form, really, it's the best way to enjoy it. So we will, of course, have that recipe for you on gazellemagazine.com.
I always think the lime and watermelon are such complementary flavors. I can't wait to try them because the sweetness of the watermelon with that little tang of the lime.
Yeah. And the little salt on the rim. Even if you don't add any alcohol, it adds a little bit of depth to it if you salt your rim with just the plain watermelon and lime juice. There are some variations to the recipe where they even add like a sprig of mint, but I think it takes away from those fruit flavors and you really don't need it. But you're more than welcome to, definitely. So yes.
There's no limit to garnishes.
Not at all. So with that, Deb, I say woof woof to you.
You want to say goodbye to Pebbles? Let me see if I can. Is she on? Tell me if she's on the cam. On.
Hey. Oh. Okay. I think she's showing off. So she's like auditioning. Hey, Pebbles.
Pebbles, want some dinner? She has this thing that she does where, for whatever reason, she has to kill her dinner. So she attacks this stuffed animal that she's doing it right now. She has to.
We can hear.
It's destroyed. It's basically only the exterior, like fur, because she's taken all the stuffing out of it. But she takes it and she shakes it around, she kills it, then she can eat.
Oh my God.
It's the funniest thing. It's like some breeding thing. Like,
yeah, I mean, sounds like, Jurassic Park right now. But so is her trigger word dinner? If you say dinner, she goes through this?
So she finds her little toy and she just attacks it, and then she tries it and eats the kibbles I poured in the bowl.
Who would have thunk that from a little sweet puggle? Okay, so Pebbles Baldwin, we know all about you now.
Stuffed animals beware.
I know, exactly. All right, well, thank you so much for spending some time with us today, and we will definitely see you next time.
Okay, bye.